Hello again, landlords. Let's talk about how do you deal with a very bad tenant. There are some amazing tenants. I've had a share of many amazing tenants, and then once in a while you have a very terrible tenant and or crappy tenant. And this can cause so much stress, so much heartache. It can cause you to have so much worry and so on. So how do you deal with a really bad tenant? In order for you to deal with a bad tenant, you have to have a strategy. You can't just react emotionally to a bad tenant and or react emotionally to the situation. You have to have a plan, and you have to know the RTA rules and regulations and their system like the back of your hand. This is because when tenants are really bad, they tend to know the RTA system better than most landlords. And it's the truth. I've seen it over and over again. As a matter of fact, it wasn't until I encountered a professional tenant, this is what we call them, professional tenant, and I began realizing that, wait a minute, this chick knows more than I do. And so I had to educate myself, I had to empower myself, I had to become informed, and then I had to develop a strategy. And most landlords want to evict the really bad tenant. They want them to leave their property, or you want to get rid of them. But if you are going to move to evict a really bad tenant, you have to have a plan, and you have to have a very good documentation process. You have to be prepared for the dispute resolution process. You have to be prepared to face the arbitrators. You have to be prepared to have your tenant drag this out for as long as possible, because if you want to get them out and they are a bad tenant and or they are already resisting you and or they're not respecting you, you're going to be up for a fight. And so they are wanting the fight. And so therefore, some of the key things for you is to be able to learn how to do things right and prepare really well for the dispute resolution process, and know the steps in terms of how to serve the tenant, what to do if the tenant disputes your service, how to communicate and how to document, how to gather evidence. You have to know the different steps along the way, like the back of your hand. And this is what I also help landlords with, because a lot of landlords really don't know the steps. They don't know what they're doing. And a lot of landlords, they actually find that they are caught off guard by a lot of these really shitty tenants, Now, once again, there are some bad landlords out there, as well as really bad tenants. There are great landlords as well as great tenants. But when you do have a bad tenant, you really need a plan in terms of how do you actually prepare, for example, for the dispute resolution process. How do you actually prepare to move the tenant through the eviction process? So moving the tenant through the eviction process is not just handing them a piece of paper like most landlords think it is. It's an actual step-by-step process that requires you to have a very good strategy so that you're doing it right, and so that you are moving the tenant through the eviction process in the correct way. So if you want to have my support and my help to deal with a bad tenant and or how to evict a tenant, if the tenant it is actually a tenant that you need to rightfully evict, then feel free to connect with me and feel free to send me a message. I'd be happy to have a quick chat with you to learn more about your tenancy and about your process.